look at these. There are millions of them.
There are dozens of technological graveyards all over the world, each more bizarre than the last. And today, we're diving headfirst into 10 of the strangest and honestly, kinda haunting abandoned technologies and vehicles ever discovered. This list will have you questioning how we went from cutting edge to completely abandoned so fast. And trust me, some of these stories will make you wonder if humanity just gets bored with genius-level ideas, or if there's something deeper behind these disappearances. So settle in, because once we start, you won't want to stop. Keep watching till the very end. Number 10. Jetpack. When people hear the word jetpack, most imagine a scene straight out of a sci-fi movie. A person flying solo through the air, dodging traffic, zipping across rooftops, or arriving at work without touching the ground. So it's pretty strange to realize that, despite the hype and the headlines over the years, jetpacks never quite took off. Why is that? How did something so cool, so futuristic, end up on the list of the most curious abandoned technologies and vehicles ever discovered? The concept of the jetpack has actually been around for decades. Back in the 1960s, the Bell rocket belt made its first public appearance. It could lift a person into the air and move them short distances, powered by bursts of gas. It looked impressive, and people were genuinely excited. For a while, it seemed like the future was here. But then came the reality check. The fuel only lasted about 20 seconds. That's it. Just enough time to hover or cross a football field, but nowhere near enough for real travel or everyday use. So while it made for amazing stunts and parades, practical use was out of the question. Over the years, others tried to improve the idea. Some inventors and even military organizations gave jetpacks a go, hoping for breakthroughs in fuel efficiency, control, or safety. There were bigger models, sleeker designs, and bolder promises. But again and again, these devices fell short. They were loud, hard to maneuver, and often dangerous, not to mention incredibly expensive. Eventually, most of them were shelved. Some were stored in warehouses and military hangars. Others were left in testing fields or found years later, half forgotten. Can you imagine stumbling across a rusted old jetpack in a junkyard and realizing what it once promised? People have asked, why didn't we just keep trying? The truth is, other technologies surpassed jetpacks. Drones, helicopters, and compact personal aircraft turned out to be easier to manage, safer, and more useful. Jetpacks never quite caught up, and so one of the most iconic pieces of futuristic imagination became just that, a dream. Still, the fascination hasn't disappeared. Even today, people talk about them, and every once in a while, someone tries to reinvent them, hoping to solve the riddle finally. So, what does the abandoned jetpack represent now? Maybe it's a symbol of how sometimes even the coolest ideas don't work out. Or maybe it's just a reminder that not everything the movies show us can survive the real world. Either way, the jetpack remains one of the strangest pieces of tech ever built, then left behind. A flying promise that never quite got off the ground. Why are perfectly good machines rotting in the middle of nowhere? From floating planes to robot dogs no one talks about, this list is full of questions, and trust me, the last one will haunt you. Number 9. The original Maglev Train. Back in the 1960s and 70s, engineers and dreamers looked at the future of transportation and thought, why can't trains float? That bold question sparked the birth of the original Maglev Train, short for magnetic levitation, a high-speed vehicle that didn't touch the ground but hovered above its tracks using powerful magnets. It sounded like something from a sci-fi movie, and for a time, it was real. The early Maglev Train was sleek, futuristic, and faster than anything else on rails. But strangely enough, today it sits abandoned. a forgotten relic of what was once considered the future. So, what went wrong? People who saw the original Maglev train up close often said it looked like it had time traveled from 100 years into the future. It made no contact with the track, which meant it could zoom along almost silently, with no wear and tear from friction. No wheels, no smoke, no grinding metal, just smooth, silent speed. Governments and scientists in countries like Germany, Japan, and even the United States threw money and energy behind this vision. There were even test tracks built, some of which still exist today, though now overgrown and rusting. At the time, it seemed obvious that this was the next big thing. So why didn't it catch on? According to experts, it wasn't a single reason, but a tangle of problems that slowly grounded the dream. First off, the cost of building and maintaining maglev infrastructure was incredibly high. The tracks couldn't use existing train lines. They had to be made from scratch, with specialized materials and magnetic systems that weren't cheap. That alone turned away many governments. On top of that, while the technology worked, it was still very experimental. Maintenance issues popped up. People asked, was it really worth the cost and trouble just to go a bit faster? Then there was the question of practicality. The original maglevs could move fast, sure, but they weren't flexible. Traditional trains could curve and climb hills much more easily, while maglev systems needed flat, straight paths. That made them hard to integrate into existing cities or landscapes. And when it came down to it, airlines were already offering high-speed options over long distances, so the maglev was stuck in the middle, too expensive for short trips and not practical enough to replace planes. Eventually, the world seemed to shrug its shoulders and move on. The test tracks were closed. The prototypes were parked and forgotten. And the original maglev train quietly became one of the strangest abandoned technologies anyone had ever seen. Isn't it a little ironic? A machine built to float above the ground, now left grounded and covered in dust. Some say it was just ahead of its time. Others think it was a great idea poorly executed. Either way, it stands as a reminder. Not every futuristic invention makes it to the future. Number 8. The Car Cemetery. Tucked away in the quiet borderlands between Norway and Sweden lies something truly unexpected. A forest filled with old, rusting cars that look like they've been swallowed whole by the earth itself. It's called the Bosnes Car Cemetery, and while the name might sound a little spooky, the site is actually a remarkable mix of history, nature, and nostalgia. Ever wonder what happens when technology from the past meets the unstoppable force of nature? Bosnes answers that question in the most visual way possible. The story of this strange, beautiful place began back in the 1950s, when two Swedish brothers, Rune and Tore Evensen, saw a need and filled it. At that time, Norway had strict rules about car imports, and car parts were hard to come by. So what did they do? From their little spot near Årjäng, close to the border, they started buying used cars from Sweden and selling the parts to eager Norwegians. Simple idea, right? But it worked. And soon, the site became a sort of automotive lifeline for people in the region. But like all good things, that business eventually slowed down. And the cars, they stayed. Left untouched, they slowly gave in to the elements. Over decades, moss crept over the metal, trees grew through shattered windshields, and rust began to eat away at once shiny chrome. Today, the place looks more like an open-air museum, or maybe even an art installation. It's eerie, quiet, and oddly peaceful. People who visit often describe feeling a strange mix of calm and curiosity. Each car seems to have its own personality, its own backstory. Was it once someone's first big purchase? Did it carry a family on road trips across Europe? As you walk among the vehicles, those questions quietly fill your mind. Of course, not everyone sees only the beauty. There are concerns about the environmental impact of so many decaying cars sitting in a forest. Could chemicals from the rusting metal be harming the soil or water? Should the site be cleaned up or preserved as a piece of cultural history? It's a tricky balance between honoring the past and protecting the future. Photographers especially love the sight. With the way light filters through the trees and bounces off the rusted hoods, every shot tells a story. And if you're thinking about visiting, the best time is early morning when the light is just right and the forest is still quiet. Just remember, there are no facilities, so come prepared. Good shoes, water, and a camera are a must. Number 7. Comanche Reef subway cars. About 30 nautical miles off the coast of Charleston, beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, lies a hidden gem not many people have heard about, Comanche Reef. It's not your typical coral reef either. Instead of coral growing on natural rock outcroppings, this reef was built from something a lot more unexpected. Old subway cars from New York City. Sounds strange? Maybe. But as it turns out, this underwater site is a fascinating example of how creative thinking can turn one city's trash into another environment's treasure. Comanche Reef is part of South Carolina's Artificial Reef Program, which began back in the early 1970s. Why did they start doing this? Because, surprisingly, only about 5 to 10% of South Carolina's ocean floor naturally supports reef life. That's not a lot when you think about how important reefs are for marine ecosystems. So, the state needed to get a bit creative. Over time, the program grew, and in came the Comanche, a 165-foot ship that gave the reef its name. But the real game-changer came between 2001 and 2010 when the MTA from New York decided to donate over 2,500 retired subway cars to various reef projects along the East Coast, including Comanche Reef. Why subway cars? That's a fair question. New York needed a cost-effective and environmentally friendly way to dispose of its aging trains. Instead of scrapping them, they chose to sink them on purpose, but not just as is. Before deployment, crews stripped the cars of anything harmful. No windows, no doors, no pollutants. What remained were clean, hollow metal shells ready to become homes for sea creatures. And boy, did it work. Today, these sunken trains have turned into bustling neighborhoods under the sea. Divers from South Carolina's Department of Natural Resources have visited the site years later, and while some subway cars have collapsed under pressure, others are still holding up. Who abandoned a car that runs on air? And why are there secret tunnels filled with forgotten inventions? Watch till the end. You'll never guess what's last on the list. Number 6. Aerot Train I80. In the 1960s, France introduced one of its boldest transportation ideas, the Aerot Train I80. Designed to transform high-speed travel, it looked like something from the future. A sleek hover train built to glide above the ground, free from the friction of traditional railways. Measuring about 25.6 meters long and weighing just over 11 tons, this full-sized passenger vehicle could seat 80 people. What made it truly remarkable, though, was how it moved. Instead of wheels, the Aerot train hovered on a cushion of air generated by powerful compressors. One might wonder, what if trains didn't need tracks in the traditional sense? Early versions, such as the I80-250, were powered by twin turboshaft engines that drove a massive ducted propeller. As engineers pushed the limits, the upgraded I80HV model swapped the propeller for a jet engine, a Pratt & Whitney turbofan. That gamble paid off in 1974 when the Aerot train hit a record speed of 430.4 km per hour, setting a world record for an air-cushioned land vehicle. It was fast, futuristic, and full of promise. So, what went wrong? Despite its speed and style, the Aerot train faced serious roadblocks. For starters, the French National Railway Company, SNCF, wasn't on board. They preferred investing in the traditional rail systems that were already in place. Building entirely new elevated guideways for the Aerot train was costly, And not everyone saw the point when existing rail could be upgraded for less. Then came the noise. The powerful turbines created such loud roaring sounds, up to 95 decibels at 60 meters, that operating it near urban areas meant slowing it down, which defeated the purpose. The final blow came from outside the world of engineering. The 1973 oil crisis made fuel-guzzling machines like the Aerot Train impractical, while competitors like the TGV could easily switch to electricity. And politically, the tides turned. After President Georges Pompidou passed away, his successor, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, pulled the plug. Within months, the project was shelved, and focus shifted to the now famous TGV. The last Aerot Train ride took place in 1977. Sadly, in 1992, just days before the I-80 was to be moved to a museum, arsonists destroyed the prototype using about 100 liters of kerosene. Still, a silent reminder remains: the elevated concrete track near Orléans, now a ghostly monument to a dream that almost took flight. It stands quietly, inviting passers-by to ask what might have been if the future hadn't arrived too soon. Number 5. Marx Generator in Russia. Hidden deep in a forest just outside Moscow is a strange and towering structure that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. At first glance, many mistake it for a Tesla coil, but those who've studied it a little closer say it's something far more unusual. It's the Soviet Marx Generator, one of the most bizarre pieces of abandoned technology in the world. Built in the 1970s by the Russian Electrical Engineering Institute, this massive machine sits quietly near the town of Istra, about 40 kilometers west of Moscow. Back in its heyday, it was built for a very specific and powerful purpose: testing how materials and military aircraft could stand up to lightning strikes. But what exactly made this machine so impressive? Well, according to researchers, it could release a burst of electricity so strong it matched the output of the entire Soviet power grid, but only for about 100 microseconds. That's the blink of an eye, but in that moment, the energy it created was nothing short of shocking. The tallest tower in the complex, which acts as the most powerful generator, could release electric discharges of up to 9 million volts, roughly equal to a natural lightning bolt. At one point, Soviet scientists even produced a 150-meter-long discharge using the machine. Can you imagine the kind of force that would unleash? Besides its use in scientific testing, there are reports that the generator had military purposes, especially during the Cold War. Some sources claimed it was used to simulate electromagnetic pulses, those powerful bursts of energy that could potentially fry the electronics inside incoming missiles. If true, that would have been a pretty big deal for Soviet defense. So why was such a powerful machine abandoned? Like so many things from the Soviet era, it came down to money and changing priorities. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, budgets for big research projects dried up. Running the Marx Generator required an enormous amount of energy, and with no funds, it simply became too expensive to keep going. And let's not forget, technology moved on. With the rise of computers and simulations, scientists didn't need a giant lightning machine anymore. Today, the structure is still there, now guarded by Rosatom and mostly quiet. It was reportedly turned on as recently as 2014, though, suggesting it still holds some value. But for the most part, it stands as a strange and haunting reminder of Soviet ambition, half forgotten, yet hard to ignore. Number 4. Train Cemetery in Uyuni. On the dusty edge of Uyuni, Bolivia, something quietly remarkable sits forgotten by time. A whole field of rusting steam locomotives, more than 100 of them left to decay in the sun and wind. They call it the Cementerio de Trenes, or the Train Cemetery. It's not just a quirky tourist stop, it's a haunting symbol of a big dream that didn't quite work out. But how did so many trains end up here, sitting still in a place where nothing moves except the wind? Back in the late 1880s, Bolivia had big plans. The country wanted to grow its rail network, especially to support its booming mining industry. British engineers were brought in, and most of the steam engines came from Britain. On November 20th, 1890, Bolivian President Aniceto Arce proudly launched the first railroad made specifically to carry minerals. Uyuni, sitting at the crossing point of 4 train lines linking Bolivia to Chile and Argentina, became a key location. What made Uyuni even more important was its closeness to the Pulicayo silver mines, just 10 kilometers away. These trains once hauled silver, tin, and gold to Pacific ports, helping power Bolivia's economy. One crucial line even connected Pulicayo to Antofagasta in Chile, making it possible to send minerals overseas. But what happened to the dream? By the 1940s, Bolivia's mining industry began to fade. The mineral supply thinned out, and keeping the railway running became too expensive. Since Uyuni was so remote, the old engines weren't worth dragging back to cities or scrapping. So, they were just left behind, parked under the open sky. And politics didn't help. Bolivia lost its coastline to Chile in the War of the Pacific, which hurt trade. Add in disputes with neighbors and reported sabotage from the local Aymara people who were against the railway, and the dream began to crumble. Over the years, nature stepped in. The salty winds from the nearby Salar de Uyuni started to eat away at the metal. The trains, once proud machines of progress, began to break down. Today, they look more like skeletons than locomotives, their surfaces carved by wind and time. With no fences or protection, many have been stripped for parts or covered in graffiti. Still, they remain standing, a strange blend of history, art, and ruin. One can't help but wonder, how did such mighty machines end up here, so far from where they were meant to go? What happens when billion-dollar inventions just vanish? Who left a futuristic tank in the middle of a desert? And why did a flying car rot in a barn for decades? Stick around. Number 1 will blow your mind. Number 3. Arosibo Observatory. Once a towering symbol of scientific ambition nestled in the lush hills of Puerto Rico, the Arosibo Observatory now stands silent, a fallen giant in the world of space exploration. Completed in 1963, this enormous radio telescope, with its iconic 305-meter-wide dish carved into a natural sinkhole, was more than just a feat of engineering. For almost 60 years, it served as one of the most important tools in astronomy, helping scientists better understand not just our solar system, but the entire universe. Who could forget the time it beamed out a radio message aimed at intelligent alien life? Or when it detected the first binary pulsar, a discovery that would later earn a Nobel Prize in physics. It was also the observatory that made the first confirmed discovery of exoplanets back in 1992. In a way, it helped humanity take its first steps into the unknown. But its influence didn't stop there. Arecibo's radar capabilities allowed scientists to study the surface of Venus, monitor asteroids that could potentially impact Earth, and even investigate the mysterious behavior of Earth's own upper atmosphere. And yet, for all its groundbreaking work, this scientific marvel met a tragic end. It began in August 2020 when an auxiliary cable unexpectedly snapped, tearing a massive gash in the dish. Then, in November, a second main cable broke, leaving experts scrambling to understand how such a failure could happen. Could it be fixed? Many in the scientific community hoped so. But after inspections showed that the remaining cables were weakening at an alarming rate, breaking at nearly 1 wire per day, the outlook grew grim. The National Science Foundation declared it too dangerous to repair. Before a controlled demolition could be carried out, nature and gravity took over. On December 1st, 2020, the 900-ton platform suspended above the dish came crashing down. Later reports blamed long-term wear and a condition known as zinc creep for the collapse. So what happens to such a historic site after its main instrument is gone? Rather than rebuild, the NSF chose to reimagine the space. By 2022, they announced plans to turn the area into an educational center. Known as Arosibo C3, this new initiative is focused on science education and community engagement, with exhibits honoring the observatory's legacy. Set to open in early 2024, it's a new chapter for a site that once spoke to the stars. After all, isn't preserving knowledge just as important as discovering it in the first place? Number 2. MSWorld Discoverer. Beached and rusting along the peaceful shoreline of Roderick Bay in the Solomon Islands, the MSWorld Discoverer looks like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Yet behind its eerie appearance lies a real story of adventure, emergency, and a ship that never made it home. Built in Germany, this vessel was once designed to take curious tourists on thrilling journeys through icy polar regions. But one day in April 2000, its final voyage turned into a dramatic escape from disaster. On April 30th of that year, around 4 p.m., while navigating the narrow waters of Sandfly Passage, the ship struck an uncharted reef or rock. It was a sudden shock, and Captain Oliver Cruz didn't waste time. He quickly radioed for help, and knowing the ship was starting to lean dangerously to one side, made the bold call to steer it toward shallow water. He deliberately grounded the ship in Roderick Bay to stop it from sinking. Thanks to that decision, all 112 passengers and 80 crew members were rescued safely by a ferry sent from the capital city, Honiara. One British passenger, David Wright, later said the ship had crashed straight into the beach, knocking down trees as it went. It was clear that the captain's quick thinking had likely saved many lives. But what happened after that? Why wasn't the ship ever recovered? Well, following underwater surveys, the ship was considered beyond repair. A total loss. Salvage efforts were planned, but quickly ran into serious trouble. At the time, the Solomon Islands were in the middle of a civil conflict. When recovery teams tried to work on the wreck in late 2000, they were met with gunfire from nearby tribes and had no choice but to leave. Isn't it wild how a shipwreck turned into a standoff? Eventually, the company that owned the ship went bankrupt in 2004, and with no one left to fund a recovery, the ship was simply left there. Over time, scavengers took what they could from it. Today, it sits abandoned, quietly rusting under the tropical sun. Now, the ship draws curious tourists who come to see the strange sight of nature slowly taking over a luxury cruise liner. Trees grow on the deck, and children from nearby villages climb the wreck, playing in the water around it. But not all is charming. Despite earlier claims that the fuel tanks had been emptied, oil still seeps into the water. Coral reefs around the ship are badly damaged. The government simply doesn't have the resources to remove the wreck. So for now, the MSWorld Discoverer remains, a haunting mix of beauty, decay, and a reminder of how quickly things can change at sea. Number 1. Duga Radar in Chernobyl. Towering over the treetops of northern Ukraine, the Duga Radar remains one of the strangest and most haunting reminders of the Cold War era. Locals and visitors alike have described it as something out of a science fiction movie. A massive metal skeleton stretching nearly 700 meters long and rising 150 meters into the sky. But what exactly was this gigantic structure doing out in the middle of nowhere, just outside Chernobyl? people might be surprised to learn it wasn't always just a rusty relic of the past. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, this towering beast played a serious role in Soviet military operations. Known by many as the Russian woodpecker due to the strange tapping noise it emitted across global radio frequencies, the Duga Radar system was designed to detect potential threats from the United States. More specifically, it was built to pick up signs of intercontinental ballistic missile launches, ideally within just 2 or 3 minutes of takeoff. Soviet engineers placed the main receiver near Chernobyl and a transmitter some 60 kilometers away, working together to bounce signals off the Earth's ionosphere. Pretty clever, right? But for all its technical genius, this high-powered machine, operating at roughly 10 megawatts, created such interference that global radio operators had to build special woodpecker blankers just to filter it out. Despite its ambitions, the Duga Radar met an abrupt and tragic end. When the Chernobyl nuclear disaster struck on April 26, 1986, the nearby area became uninhabitable almost overnight. How could a massive radar continue to operate in a radioactive exclusion zone? It couldn't. The site was evacuated in a hurry, and the project was quietly shelved. By the end of 1989, around the same time the Cold War came to a close, the radar sent out its last mysterious signal. In truth, it wasn't just the nuclear meltdown that sealed its fate. Advancements in satellite technology had already made the Duga system less relevant. Of course, with such a strange history, it's no surprise that conspiracy theories began to swirl. Some Westerners speculated that the radar was actually used for mind control or weather manipulation. A few even suggested that the Chernobyl disaster had been staged to hide flaws in the radar's design. Isn't it wild how mystery and secrecy can spin such theories? Today, the Duga Radar stands frozen in time, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Visitors to the Chernobyl exclusion zone still stop to marvel at its eerie presence, a Cold War ghost that whispers stories of ambition, secrecy, and unexpected endings. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.